Do I need to get rid of my coffee cup? Should I hide it? Do you care?
Yeah, like Game of Thrones. Like Game of Thrones, hide your coffee cup.
Or your bottle of water.
Or your bottle of water.
Pull up, two subs in the back, playing all them old school tracks. When I pull up, no, you already heard. You ain't gotta say another word. When I pull up, they notice.
Welcome to another episode of Small Talk, and as you can see, we are not in our usual location of the garage. We are at Electronic Arts Vancouver. We're super happy to be here on location, and we are talking to a phenomenal woman, Wendell Harlow, who is the outreach manager for EA and does a lot of amazing work in the community. So we're so happy to be talking with you today.
Oh, I'm really happy that you are all here today. It's actually really thrilling to be able to share a lot of the good stuff we're doing. And I'm very proud of all the work that we do, so it's great. I'm very happy you're here.
What was the last thing you did that you regretted?
Oh, I slept in.
Oh, that's a good one.
And I missed a meeting.
Nobody
knows that, so they don't know which one it is.
What did you eat for breakfast this morning?
Today I had an egg McMuffin.
What is something that you watch on Netflix that you're too afraid to tell anyone?
Oh, for sure. Probably Russian dolls and probably Black Mirror.
No, you should tell people that you watch.
No, they're both favorite.
You have to pick one band that represents the soundtrack of Wendell. What would it be?
Oh gosh, it probably would be either Depeche Mode or Peter Gabriel.
Oh, nice. Salisbury Hill.
Salisbury Hill.
You want to talk a bit about like what your role is and what you do and how you engage with the community?
Oh, my favorite subject of all time. I never get enough telling people the great things we do. So I started at EA 23 years ago. There was no community relations, there was no outreach. I worked in production for the first 3 years, worked on triple play baseball. I worked on the wrestling game, traveled with the WCW for 2 years doing two of our games, and then worked on snowboarding games. And then I went to my boss and I said, you know, I am a Make-A-Wish grantor I grant wishes at Make-A-Wish, and I really think we're missing the boat on a lot of community outreach because there was no community outreach. And if you take a chance on me and I can create a program, would you be interested in changing my title, changing my role? And they said, you know, go present it to the CEO. So I went to Don Matrick back in the day and I said to Don, I have a dream, I have this passion in my heart. I'm a wish grantor for Make-A-Wish. Half of the wishes are tech wishes. Mm-hmm. We're not doing much in the community except for our game donation program. And he said, well, why don't you go back and create something, come back and see me. So I did. A week later, had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
No idea. But I had a wonderful manager who believed in me, another senior vice president of HR. And they said, you can actually create this job for yourself if you give us a year in HR. You know all the jobs so well at EA. Why don't you work on the HR team? And then in the afternoons, you can run around the city and talk to your peers and figure out how you're going to create a program for us.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. For a year and a half, I worked on the HR team, ran out in the afternoon with my black book and talked to different peers at TELUS and PMC Sierra, and I just wanted to see how we could most affect the community.
Yeah.
And so they finally released me that second year, and I was able to create our program, start from scratch, and recruit some volunteers. And thank gosh, back in those days, my wonderful colleague James Banting and I, who's on the NHL team right now, still 20 years later as senior SE, decided we would pinpoint education. And education, thank gosh we did. We had the foresight. I don't know the universe. Thank you, universe, because 20 years later, that's still our focus is STEM, STEAM education, arts, science, computer science, coding. So we've been bringing in over 45 schools a year and thousands of students, and we just made up the whole program, how to get here, what STEM was, what programming was, what art was, concept, lighting, modeling, every kind of job there is to know at EA, even from support groups to facilities to legal to music licensing.
Yeah.
We shared everything with them and created videos and presentations. And 3 years ago, we signed with a wonderful company called EverFi in the US, and they created an incredible program called Play to Learn, similar to Teals.
Yeah.
And we launched in all of our 5 specific locations: Orlando, Austin, San Francisco, LA, and Vancouver. And I'm responsible for all of the Canadian content, and then I have a colleague in the US, and we kind of work together on the other locations. So wherever we had a location, we would launch. So we've now, in our 3rd year, we just signed for another 3 years, so we're going to be going again starting in the fall. Very proud of the program, very proud of our teacher implementation managers. So we're now in over 60 schools, and we've taught over 10,000 kids how to code. And we've lowered all the barriers. That's every kid that we grade 8 to grade 10, no matter what school. And we want to get into remote areas as well.
Lots of people you're impacting in lots of places. Is there any one thing out of all those things that, or any one moment that you've had where you felt just the most proud?
I think probably the most proud I've been as working within our community relations and outreach team is being able to have, from my previous life, I worked in film and television, have a lot of celebrities come here and take them up to Canuck Place and Children's Hospital, and through Make-A-Wish, is to give them that incredible, they all love superheroes, so I always try to pick the superheroes that are in town. We never let the media know. They can come here with baseball caps and, you know, dirty hair. They don't have to worry about anything, and they get to meet a lot of kids who are at end of life. Which is, to them, they will say yes if they're going to be in town. So we've had wonderful, wonderful moments with celebrities here who have touched my heart, touched the kids' hearts. The thing that makes me most proud is they can come here and make those memories with their kids, and they will have those forever.
Yeah.
And that is, you're going to make me cry, okay? So don't.
It's the goal.
Yeah, it's your
It's the
goal.
goal. I haven't broken anyone yet.
Yeah.
I'm going to break you, Wendell.
break
It's going to happen.
So those are very
Yeah.
touching moments for me and make me very proud to be able to represent EA and do all these great things. And like I say, I stand on a lot of shoulders, have a lot of volunteers.
Is there any particular highlight or something that was extra special that you'd want to share?
Oh my gosh, yes, we've done multiple wishes here and tours and over the years, and worked with Make-A-Wish so closely. Ross Hetherington, one of my best friends, he's the CEO of Make-A-Wish BC and Yukon Foundation. So Ross called me, this was 3 years ago, or maybe coming up 4 years ago, in a panic, and said they had a little boy. He was 5 years old, and he was had leukemia, and he was too sick to travel to Disneyland. And was there any way we could create something here for him? Because his second wish was to have a carnival. And I said, well, where on earth are we going to do a carnival? And he said, well, what about in the Capture Lab? And I went, well, it's never dark. It's like we facilitate, our Capture Lab facilitates all sports and all games around EA World. So it's never, they never have a dark day. When do we want to do this? He said, in 2 weeks. And I went, oh, I don't even think there's any way we can do this. So I called the manager at the time, and he said, called me back about 5 minutes later, and he said, Wendell, he said, I am the father of 2 kids, and again, this is pulls at the heartstrings of a lot of our managers and leadership team. And he said, you won't believe it, but those 3 days you want, we had 3 cancellations, one after another. Bear in mind, I still had to find all the rides, all the displays, all the games, all the food. Anyways, so I called West Coast Amusements out in Langley, and I said, I know you're closed, it's November, everything is probably frozen, but is there any way you could lend us all these rides in a week? And I told her the story, and she said, oh gosh, I don't think it's going to be possible because my boss is in the US and everything is in containers and frozen until next year. So I said, well, that's probably not going to happen. She called me back an hour later. She said, I'm a 4-year cancer survivor. I called my boss, and I said, we're doing it. So they lent us everything for free, and the flatbed truck. So we had all the rides, and then we had to I called Master Blasters, who do all the games and all the prizing. We had 5 different game zones. We had everything from we had every single thing on the list. It was jammed in there. It looked like the PNE. So we had everything delivered, and then Kieran and his family arrived the next day. That was the load-in day. Then we had the day of the event, and I thought, I'm going to call CTV. I just did it all myself, called all the local stations, and I said, look, we're having this amazing wish. I got an okay from Make-A-Wish and the family. Do you want to bring a couple of cameras? So they came at 11 in the morning and they stayed the entire day. They were so blown away. You can actually see it on YouTube, the event. And we were absolutely blown away. The family just loved it. All his family was there. Some came in from Calgary. This is the biggest wish we ever pulled off in such a short a time ever in the history of Make-A-Wish. So we were very, very proud. And it was just an incredible day. 3 days of working with the family and working with Make-A-Wish, and I still can't believe we did it to this day. And
the carnival in a single area. That
and in such a short time, in 2 weeks, and getting every single person from all those suppliers and vendors giving us everything for free. Was unbelievable.
That's part of creating a culture of giving, right? And a culture of giving back is, you know, you can put the opportunities out there, but people have to show up for those opportunities, right? And so how did you find that starting out to where you are now? Like, how would someone in their company create a culture of giving? Because it sounds like, from your perspective, what I've heard is super passionate about it. I found out a way to carve it and make it my job, and people want to follow you because you obviously inherently have this passion for it. How would other people start to create that culture of giving and giving back within their company?
Well, that's funny you should ask, because quite a while ago I was asked to do an interview for To Be Now, and the cut line was, she's the cultivator of hearts.
That's a good line.
And I thought, I think I have cultivated a lot of hearts, and I think it takes heart to create heart. And if you don't have that passion, and you don't have that, and I don't know where it comes from. I think it comes from my family. My mom was a huge support of the community. You know, she door to door with the Heart Fund and Easter Seal. I mean, grew up watching her do that. So I think part of it is you see your parents. My dad did the same thing. Meals on Wheels, drove people to cancer treatment appointments. I mean, my sisters are the same. So I think I grew up in that. Listen, it didn't affect me till I was much later in life, because I was having too much fun and doing, you know, my own thing and traveling and having my career. But when you come back to it all, I think fortunate enough to know that in my, you know, my soul was giving back, and I always wanted to be a nurse, so that kind of came into it as well. And I think when you have that passion for something, and if you grow up in it, that's a culture in itself. That's your family culture. And then when you go to your new job or go to a job and you see there's not a lot happening in the community, even though you're doing another job completely different, you could go to your managers or to somebody and say, you know, I'd love to be a part of this event this weekend. Is there any way we can support it? Is there any way we can get some people out? It starts tiny seed. You water it, you grow it, you have your coworkers and peers trust you, really trust you that you could do this, and they could do it along with you. And I think that's the impetus of starting something very small, very the beginning roots of culture of giving back in any company. And I'd be happy to go speak to any company that doesn't have that culture and tell them exactly the recipe that they might be able to use to get there too. Yeah,
because I think a lot of people figure, well, I don't have a lot of time, or like I'm not quite sure where to go, or I don't know where a company is aligned to. And so being that one person who can just like, hey, you know what we should do at Christmas? We should sponsor a family, or that kind of thing, and just not waiting for it to happen, but be the starter of it yourself, really small.
That's so funny you mention that, because the very first program I was, and we're almost 23 years with them, is the YWCA Presence of Peace. And my boss and I were the first to adopt a family, and then I said to, you know, we should maybe push this out to the rest of the studio. We were still quite small then. And I started out at the Dominion Street studio in 1996, and we opened this studio in 99, and then added phase 2 in 2006, and then our capture lab. And she said, you know, that's a great idea. Let's just send an email out and see who we could get. And by the end of that day, we had like 10 people sign up to adopt a family. We didn't even have a program then.
You've said it a few times, and I think it's really speaks to the culture that you've you've had here? Is it you really require other people? Like, it's not,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and all the volunteers
yeah.
coming together.
Oh yeah.
And you know, how do you recruit new people? Because there's gonna be people who are always interested, but how do you bring everyone together and around, and how do you kind of shepherd them forward towards some of those
sauce
things?
to that.
Ooh.
And I'm happy to share that with you.
Oh, good. So not so secret.
What we do, it won't be secret now. We have lunch and learns.
Yeah.
So, and whenever I have time, we actually have lunch and learns. Bring your lunch.
Yeah.
We have volunteers speak. We have different channels, different portals, different EA World sites that we
Yeah.
can post all these amazing stories on, and then people see it. Oh, hey, I'd really like to get involved in Special Olympics. How do I do that? What do I
Yeah.
do? Can I bring my family? Yes, you can bring your kids.
What are you going to carve out next for yourself? What's your next role, your next passion?
Oh my gosh, Stacy. I've had so many passions and so many amazing jobs and career paths. And I think the next thing, for me, as I think towards the future in EA, especially in this tech age and in this age and era of sharing, I would love to be able to do podcasts like you and share our story with a lot more people and have more connections with our other offices across the country. And you know, I would just love to travel around the world and say, here, studio, this is how you can create your own culture, how you can build, and I'd love to do a TED Talk one day and just say, this is exactly, if you want this to do something really special in your company or in your community, you just have to be able to cultivate those hearts and have them believe in you and push you forward. So yeah, it's very exciting, and I love my job. I love my coworkers. I've been to a lot of our studios around EA World, and I can tell you with our outreach champions that we do have, it's just, they're making such a huge difference, and I couldn't be prouder to be an ambassador for our community.
Thank you so much for having us in your space at EA Vancouver and for sharing a little bit about what you're all about. It was such a pleasure. And that is another episode of Small Talk, where we talk to people in the community doing amazing things in Vancouver. We'll see you in the next episode.